Hello again, and welcome back to Versus. We've got James here today. Hey up, James.
Hey Nathan, how you doing, mate?
All right. Um, got a treat because we've not seen Paradox Academy yet on this series, I don't think. So
No.
this is gonna be nice. Um, we have got George playing Paradox Academy, and Jay playing Izzet Tempo. Do you want to tell us about Paradox Academy?
Yeah, so George's Paradox Academy, his deck's not too different from a lot of the traditional ones that you'll see. Just trying to make a lot of mana, combo off in many different ways that artifacts do, with making loads of mana, drawing loads of cards, and tapping a bunch of lands. One of those lands being one of the pointed cards to layer in Academy, but there's also Soul Ring, Tinker, Ancient Tomb, and Mana Vault, so you can really just see the plan of it there is just do obnoxious, like busted, broken things, and hope your opponent doesn't have a collector roof for the most part, which is probably
No.
pretty safe before against Jay, to be fair. So
Okay, fair enough. Yep. And then Jay is playing their Is It Tempo deck, and there is a lot to like about this deck from my point of view. Not only is it a relatively budget deck, it also is a tempo deck, so counter spells. You're playing some small threats early on, following it up with counter spells. Real interactive magic, which I love. But the most important thing about this deck, and the reason I love it this list so much, is because it's built specifically for your meta.
yeah,
uh, and when I used to play standard, I built new decks based on what other people were playing, and that was where my success was. Not because I was playing the most powerful decks, because I was playing the deck that could beat the most powerful decks. It was great.
yeah. Jay's with the possible section of me. Jay is the person who will do the most random weird decks, in a variety over a long period of time. But they do love Izzet Tempo, and I think if you would ask them, they'd have about four different variations of Izzet Tempo that are all slightly different depending on what they wanted to focus on at any given time.
Okay, nice.
So yeah, it's definitely their pet deck. When I think of Jay, I think of Izzet Tempo.
Yep, love it.
Ooh,
Oh, there's a start.
yeah,
Oh,
and
so
that's
a very quick monolith that is dazed.
yeah,
So
that's literal. I mean, that has to be why Jay played the Mystic Sanctuary out tapped turn one if he didn't have a one drop, because obviously Days can lose value against Academy quite quick because it does make loads of mana. So snapping off such a powerful spell on turn one is really good.
yeah, always painful, especially as a limited player. Me thinking, wait, you've just taken a whole turn off here to daze, but when what your opponent's doing is that powerful, it just feels good.
Yeah, exactly. So it's just necessary sometimes. You just got to get another powerful. just getting done by not paying one every
What's
time.
memory jar do?
It's a wheel basically
Ah,
on and off.
okay. Ugh.
So it's just a great way to refill your hand when you're comboing off and making infinite mana, and even just to kind of dig yourself out of a mulligan a little bit.
An artifact wheel into a force spike. Wow. Jay
Oh,
kept
yeah,
the perfect hand to deal with what
exactly.
George is doing.
It just worked out brilliant. And again, Force Spike, not by any stretch unplayable. Like you can definitely get a lot of people, but there is a fairly greedy meta. Like Jay said, they've meta gamed this deck a bit that likes to cast lots of spells or cast high power spells, or one of the reasons they play decks that have so many Blood Moon or Harbinger of the Sea effects like Vibe is because we've got a big greedy meta here, and they'd like to punish us for doing the things that we want to do, which is perfectly reasonable, and it's working out really well here. Like a pretty busted potential start here from George has just been nullified from two one mana spells.
So much respect for Jay and their deck right now. And also noticing that, hey, if you're playing just a load of artifacts, then Chain Lightning's not got many targets, so we're just going to aim it
No.
directly at your face.
Yeah, you're not really bothered about Chain Lightning. You think a mage if it wasn't already under a Chrome Mox. It's never going to kill an Urza. It's never going to kill a Golos. It's almost never going to kill a Construct in
True.
George's deck. So you might as well just get the use of it where you can. But nothing from George on three. So not sure if it's maybe the workshop has reached a stage where it's being a bit of a pain because it doesn't tap for mana for anyone else for any non-artifact spells. But it may just be that trying to play around something from Jay, but that's rough to do. It's quite hard to kind of play around a tempo deck. You just kind of have to force them to have it a lot of
Yeah,
the time.
normally you just have to play your things, and it's the order in which you play them that's important rather than just not playing
Yeah.
stuff.
Yeah, and it does sometimes ride a little bit of variance depending on whether they've got the right thing for the right situation. And Jay obviously had the right thing on turn 1 and turn 2 situation. So it just depends on what line George is trying to go with. He must be making some type of plan because he's fetching. So doing that main phase suggests you have a plan for the turn.
Have you played Paradox Academy decks before?
I have not played. I've played against them many times.
Okay,
I have
yeah.
I've
Not played
played
with them. I'm just interested to know how early George is thinking. What is my line to victory? Because it is a combo deck, right?
Yes, it is a combo deck, but it's not. It's not quite the same as some of the other ones you've seen, like like Doomsday, for example. That
Yep.
isn't. It's not quite an A plus B combo deck.
Yes.
And neither is technically Nardu, I guess, which you've also you've had on before. But it's like it does get a lot of just consistent value, and has cards like Wheel of Fortune here, just trying to keep going and
Yeah.
go through building up a board where it becomes too much to deal with.
It certainly isn't like Glass Cannony in any way, like combos are normally.
No, I mean it is again slightly if your opponent has a collector roof, because then
Okay.
you just
Yeah.
sit there and cry and hope for the best from maybe an Urza, or hope you draw your Otawara, which is pretty much I think the only thing that a lot of these decks play that can counter that type of card. But it's become interesting. Obviously, there's a certain Force Spike getting even more value here, which is just a little bit.
So we've got three casts of a spell that says, "Hey, can you pay 1 extra, please?"
Yes.
Cool.
It's making a mockery of the "Do you pay the 1 Ristic Sully" meme.
Yep, love it.
To completely brutalize somebody.
Oh, you've got a land that taps for 3 mana. Not going to help you here.
But it is quite interesting. Like for a long-ish while, there wasn't that much in the way of combo in our meta, and so decks weren't really masking that well to play against it. So the first person who played Academy kind of consistently was doing really well for quite a long time because the decks weren't set up to do it. But we have quite a lot more now. Another Academy player. You've seen Breach, seen the Time Seeker Walk combo.
Yep.
Occasionally, people play Storm. So like, just doing more to more people are metaing against it, so those decks struggle a bit more now than they did.
Yeah.
Which is, I think, the thing to remember if you ever do get frustrated by a combo deck just comboing off and you being like, oh, for God's sake.
Yep.
Like, you can plan your decks to deal with them. It's just whether you want to do that in the deck building process.
Yeah, that's cool. Well, this is a card that certainly helps turn people off.
Yeah. Although the workshop does tap for mana now for non-artifact spells, so there's always
look at that.
Yeah.
You've basically ramped George there, Jay.
Exactly. But he also managed to sneak in an untapped Mystic Sanctuary as an island. It also has a couple of threats now, which is obviously relevant. The Tempo deck is not an Izzet control deck. It is an Izzet Tempo deck. It wants to have things attacking for in general 2 power, 2 damage each.
Needs to be a couple of 2 power flyers or whatever. Well, these ones don't fly, but.
But when your opponent can't cast anything, it doesn't really matter. Although I suppose, colorless. A lot of the threats that George will want to deploy are colorless, and they also play blue. So it's not as backbreaking as it would be if you were just playing against some Jeskai Black or 4-color mid-range deck or something. They just can't cast half of their spells anymore, or more.
Yep, makes sense.
It's an interesting matchup. This one. When I was deciding what matchup we should film in this round, I was like, that looks like a good one.
Yeah.
Because we've not had Academy, which is kind of a quintessential combo deck.
I think anybody that knows of or plays Canlander knows this deck, right? It's
it's almost like it's an archetype in and of itself. There is multiple ways to play an Academy deck. I did say I've never played an Academy deck. I do have one deck that runs Academy, but it's mono blue and it's terrible, so I don't really count it. But even in that one, just having the 1 ring and Paradox Academy basically wins you the game, right? As long as you've got some mana rocks to untap. So, but the 1 ring certainly not essential in any of those situations either, because it's just such a powerful card. They can do so much.
What is that?
That is an Assassin's Creed card. It's a slightly better. Oh God, what's it called? There's a land that brings back. You sack it to bring back artifacts from the graveyard.
Okay.
and it's basically that. It's a buried ruin.
Yes.
I want to say buried ruin. So, and I like this. George going out on her own terms, tapping the 2 talisman for white, being done with all of your nonsense. Thank you, Jay.
I will keep myself. Thank you very much.
Yeah. So you were asking me, I think, when I was playing my legendary deck, whether the Assassin's Creed cards come in. There's one of them. So
Yeah.
there are some that are making a splash, as it were. But
Like
again, only. But the cards that you start seeing in Academy decks, that you remember seeing them when they were spoiled and be like, well, that's not very good. No one's going to play that. And then you see it in this type of shell and like, oh my god, it's amazing, and I can't do anything about it.
Yeah, especially for me as a limited player. Like, there's so many cards that I look at and go, that's like a blue card that just goes and gets 5 artifacts from your top 5 cards or something stupid.
Yeah. Yeah, it is an interesting one. Anchor to Reality, I think, is that the Neon Dynasty one?
Yes, that's actually the one I was thinking of.
Yeah, unplayable and limited, but pretty good because it's just dig through time without having to delve anything a lot of the time in Academy decks.
Looks like we do have a mulligan here as we go into game 2.
Again, the Academy deck is a deck that can mulligan pretty well because it has a lot of card advantage for a combo deck. Well, most combo decks have card advantage, but it's got a lot of ways to draw itself out. It can make mana fast. So if you get one of those horrible hands where you get a 4-drop, 2 4-drops and 4 lands, it doesn't matter because one of those lands taps for 3, and then
yeah.
More talisman, and you cast your entire hand by turn 3, and then you can draw a wheel and you're off to the races again, if you know what I mean. So. Or if one of those lands just happens to be Tolarian Academy, then you're laughing.
Yep.
But again, Jay would just be looking to kind of keep on top of that. Just make sure that if they just looks like a mold of 6, no 5. So 5 is much harder than 6. Obviously, that goes for the same for pretty much every format of Magic, but definitely still weighs out of this for George, as I said.
Cracking it straight away because. Force of Stifle. Jay wants a Force of Stifle in the format.
Yeah, of course they would. There is comments between all the different. There's quite a lot of players who play blue and play counter spells, and some of us don't play Stifle, but Jay definitely does, and everyone always knows that if you can play around. If you're playing Jay and everyone you should probably try and play around Blood Moon and Stifle as much as you possibly can.
Yes. Okay.
Definitely.
We've not played around Blood Moon, but we have played around Stifle.
It's pretty rough to play around Blood Moon in a Academy deck. But it's if I'm show up against Jay and I've got a 4-color mid-range deck, I'm like, I've got one of each basic, and I hope I find them because otherwise this might not go well.
So no duels in Jay's deck. So this fetch is triple the pain.
Yeah. They don't do that in all of their decks, but this one I believe is proxyless, and it is like a budget build.
Yep.
So it's there's a few of us do have decks that aren't proxied. So I think Jay if we ever were to run just all go on a group outing to some kind of formal tournament, we could all, at least we know there's a few of us who could play decks. But
it makes sense.
Yeah, a lot of the time, especially in a 2-color deck, it can be minimal. The improvement you get from just having a random volcanic island for the cost of buying a volcanic island, can be minimal. So Jay's obviously just been like, yeah, whatever. Steam vents will be fine 99 times out of 10, and they're aggressive. Their life total does matter, obviously, but it doesn't.
Especially in this matchup, doesn't matter as much.
Yeah, exactly. No worries about it here.
So Goblin Guide revealed a Tezzeret.
Goblin Guy's a traitor. He always lands on the side of whoever's attacking with it. I've noticed that because I never attack with one.
I was going to say, this does not sound like your kind of card.
No, I've even got a mono red deck, but it does not run Goblin Guy.
Yeah.
But it is big red.
An aggro 1-drop that also gives your opponent cards.
Yeah, I'm good.
That's not you.
But to be fair, even in some red decks, it's starting to have Boomerang on the talisman. So Boomerang a little bit of a niche one as well. Not always powerful enough to go in decks, but again, can be a good one to slow down. Mulligan's gonna be a bit rough for George to replay that threat and also make full use of this saga.
It's an interesting decision to do that there, right? Because the cap size was on top. So that's probably the reason that Jay went for that boomerang on the signet or the talisman, whichever one it was. I don't know. Kind of felt great.
Possibly, but like you're not upset if your opponent casts a cap size without buyback on your 1-drop.
Yeah, true.
That's not really sad. Jay's like, sure, here's my Goblin Guide again. Off we go.
It's
but
more
it has
that
kind of worked.
it's more that George doesn't have the blue mana for it.
Yeah, but again, if George is holding up mana for days, then again that tends to suit Jay because George wants to play it at sorcery speed, for the most part, and Jay will almost always have a cheap counter spell to interact with stuff. So that works to their benefit as well. And again, just same here. So instant speed interaction just to deal with a construct.
We said that we said that the burn was probably not going to be able to hit a construct. Well, we've done it.
I know. Just needed a multi-5.
It helps when your Paradox Academy opponent's not playing any artifacts.
Yeah. But Jay's obviously in a quite strong spot at the minute, but Soaring is obviously a very powerful card and can do a lot of work with.
Oh. Jay's attempted to counter a Soul Ring that was brought into play from an Izzet Saga.
No, not quite loud. Just quick little wind that one back. I'm sure it'll be fine. And now all of a sudden it's a 3-3, and the other one would have been a 4-4. So it was exactly the only moment really when that would have worked. So yeah, there is minimal returning value on Burnt Crusher Giant, but again, a 4-3 will kill people pretty quickly.
It's just a good card. It's just yeah.
Yeah, I think it's maybe not quite. A couple of years ago, it was almost an auto include in a lot of decks as well because it was just the
value is so so good.
But it's fallen down away a little bit, just because power keep creeping, and more cards keep being printed that are even more powerful, that are somehow better than a 3-mana 4/3 with a shock attached to it. But there's always value for Questing Beast when there's Questing Beast. I was thinking of Questing Beast, so I was going to talk about the damage can't be prevented element of Stomp, which was also
yes.
So when people are playing One Rings, which lots of people are,
yes, of course.
Nemesises and things like that, it can be quite useful.
Oh, so you cast that, and you can still attack into somebody who's cast the One Ring, because
exactly.
Yeah, makes sense.
But yeah, sadly no good attack to Jay. Not to want a second threat or a threat with evasion, and that Goblin Guide is just staring at a 3/3 construct. And
yeah, this is why these early threats want to have flying, right?
Yeah, or you just want a critical amount of them to keep pressuring.
Mm-hmm.
But Jay must have some stuff to do. They've not played the Bone Crusher Giant from Exile, so it's not like they're out of options. They're just waiting to use them the most effectively, as it were. Which is one of the scary things about playing against combo decks, because if you tap out, they could just beat you.
It could just be the win from nowhere at all.
Yeah. Which sometimes is I would imagine puts tempo players in a harder place, like because you want to commit to the board to an extent, and
Yeah, to win the game, I have to have some threats on board. I can't just hold up counter spells with nothing threatening a win. Oh, there's a counter spell, a proper one.
Yeah, but I think if you're playing against a mid-range deck or something like that, and you tap out, they might get a good threat in with a good ETB. But if you've got a removal spell or you think you're winning the race, then it might not matter. But if you tap out and they just win the game, then it does matter.
So you've almost got to just play it like it's a control deck when you've not got the threats down, just to make sure you don't lose out of nowhere.
Yeah, which is why cards, it's not much of a hot take for me to say that the Saga is a very powerful card, but it's why things are still attached onto lands are so good. One of the Sammy, who I think you might have had on before, has Eldrazi decks, and she always searches up Bayavugin because can't counter a tutor on a land very well. You just can't. So like those kinds of effects, we've seen Dark Depths combos still be good, however many years ago it's been since Dark Depths was printed.
Yep.
So lands can't be countered. Always kind of are one of the banes of, whenever I play control decks, Vindicate goes in quite a lot when I'm playing white and black, just because it can answer lands. It's one of the reasons my Otherworldly Light is so good, because you can just pop off an Urza Saga for 1 mana.
Yeah, it's good. I find myself doing it, and I've seen other people doing it. Ooh, there's a card. That's the Academy, right?
Yeah, that is indeed the Academy.
I found myself responding to somebody playing a land. Like they'll say, for example, I'll play a Tellurian Academy, and I'll go, "Yep." It's just like as if I have to give you permission to continue. Like,
I haven't been given no priority to sign this off.
yes, exactly. But I'm still going to approve your land drop.
Yeah, even though it's killing me, and I'm not happy about that. Yeah, we'll just tap 1 land and basically cast Tezzeret off the back of it. So that's again, there's not many lands that are pointed.
If only this Tezzeret could untap said land.
Yes. Oh well. What a shame. We'll just wait till George finds their candelabra, and then he basically can. So dig through time. Costing a bit more mana than Jay would have liked it to. They've missed, I think, a couple of land drops and haven't exactly been super spell slingy. So having to tap out for this means basically looking for a force, I would imagine, here. Or maybe if
Is
can't even
this
flare
Tezzeret's on the stack, I assume?
I think so, yes. Because it's not been activated, so if you're going to respond to it from Jay's point of view, you would. Okay, so they did pick up Subtlety. So we're delaying the problem. That's tomorrow's problem now. If it resolves. It looks like it is, yeah.
Yeah, George is just going to put it back on top, understandably. Card's pretty darn scary with the Tellurian Academy in play.
Yeah, just 2 super relevant words. Like, untapping artifacts is obviously huge. Tutoring for artifacts is obviously huge. I think it comes in on 4, so it can't search up the Paradox Engine right away. But it can search up a lot of things right away, or just make even more mana. And threaten to do that next turn. And again, this construct is just sitting here with a big stop sign pointed at the Goblin Guide. And like I say, Jay still can't really tap out to put that Bonecrusher Giant down, because they need to be able to interact with what George is doing.
We have a surprise Tezzeret.
Yeah, no one could have called this. Completely out of nowhere.
Out of nowhere twice.
Yeah, I remember the first time I played against an Academy player, and I was still quite new to it, and the format, I was like, they played a 5-mana Planeswalker. I was like, that's a commander card. I'm not worried about that. And they're like,
by the way, I win the game.
Yeah, I was like, oh dear, I am worried about that. Never mind. We learn.
Oh, we've gone to combat, so we've done the rare thing of we've played Planeswalker, not used its ability, and allowed priority to be passed before using its ability.
Just to give it vigilance.
Just to give a card. Yeah, I'm not sure about that.
I mean, it may be that George just literally had nothing better to do with all of their mana, so they might as well. It's better to get in for 4 damage than not.
I suppose, yeah, that's true.
But again, again, I suppose when things are on the board, you can pressure the player with counter spells. So they do have nothing but counter spells. A 4/4 will kill them through every counter spell in the world. Whereas if you're relying on Search for Glory to go and find a Paradox Engine, for example, there's a good chance that either Search for Glory or Paradox Engine does not resolve. Right. So it's good to be attacking on the other axis, even though I bet George wins by attacking 1% of the time, if that. So
players still start the game with 20 life.
Exactly. Just a heads-up play to try and keep on top of all of the angles, and he is gradually creeping up on life again. This Inventor's Fair is bit by bit ticking up, giving him a bit more and a bit more, and that does matter. Once you've gained 6 to 10 life against a deck that is trying to kill you with burn spells, that is significant.
Yeah, it's pretty big.
Yeah.
I feel really sorry for this Goblin Guide right now. Like, where are my friends? Where? There's a giant that's refusing to come and join me.
Yeah. The giant knows better, clearly.
Yeah, yeah, and I'm just gonna stay hidden behind this card that says I'm on an adventure. I'm not coming back
Yeah.
again.
Yes, he's busy stomping people. He doesn't have time to come and get crushed by a construct himself.
Oh,
I have to assume. Oh, they're getting the One Ring. Yeah. Again, that's a pretty good one too when you've got 4 mana rather than Paradox Engine. It's one of the really interesting things about Academy is like white and green aren't often colors associated with artifact decks necessarily, but you just get all the land tutors obviously that let you find the Academy and just a bunch of weird white cards that like Search for Glory, which is barely played in anything that isn't that. So
yeah. Oh, we've got that's a good card against the One Ring. Well, I mean, it, it makes the One Ring slightly less awesome. It's,
they just have to wait one turn the first time, but as soon as they're drawing 2 a turn,
yeah, exactly.
one's doing it anyway. And again, flying threat is good.
Yep.
George has been gaining some life, just getting a flyer in that can just start attacking.
Well, Tezzeret's more of an issue here than life total, I would assume.
And -5 the Tezzeret to get a Paradox Engine if you're so inclined, and Jay sniffing that out.
Not
And also
anymore.
having a lightning.
That helps.
So we've got rid of it. We got rid of another tutor, but there is still a One Ring and a Academy, and a construct, all of which are usually problems enough on their own to justify. Weird balance here of George both losing and gaining life with the Inventor's Fair and the One Ring at the same time.
Love that. Jay's gone. Did you gain a life? No, I didn't. Oh, did you lose a life? Oh, no, I didn't. Thanks for that.
It's ahead of the game. George is super ahead of the game. Is what they're about. So this is what I was talking about earlier. When it's not just that I get this card and I combo off and win. Like this has been a long game. We've had many turns, and George is not dead, but has not won, but is still in a good spot.
Yes.
So it just shows that like I personally think Academy is one of the more powerful combo decks. It does straight fold to some stuff. If you've got a Collector Roof that you can't answer because your only removal spell is an Ether Spellbomb or something, then obviously you're in trouble. But an Artifact Hate, Tutoring Hate and stuff, Opposition Agent, Stifle. We talked about the Stifle earlier from Jay there.
We've got a Stifle that's even better than stifling a fetch land.
Yep.
Stifling an Inventor's Fair fetch. But we do find another card that tutors in Urza's Cave.
Yes. So I'm trying to think what he might be going after here. Possibly just what's it called? Minamo, the one that untaps another land just to get more value out of the Academy. We've already lost Inventor Fair. We've lost Urza's Saga.
It's the Abstergo. We're going for the Assassin's Creed card.
Oh, and also yeah, you can see there. Buried Ruin, I think, only costs 2 and it just returns 1 thing for sacking it. This one costs 3 and exiles. Returns a more general thing, just any historic card rather than just an artifact.
Okay.
But does nuke everyone's graveyard as well.
Which is potentially relevant against
She's a bit surprised
Jay's
about
Tempo deck.
Yes. Which and that's good, right? There's a bunch of things that say delve on them in Jay's Tempo.
Yeah, exactly. So we've got Murktide Regent, I assume. We've got the Dig Through Time and other delve spells that we've seen.
Yeah, Treasure Cruise will be in there. It will, I'm pretty confident Jay's running Unholy Heat, so it would turn off Delirium if that was a thing to bear in mind as well.
It's a bit awkward that Abstergo Entertainment exiles George's yard as well, but I suppose if you've got back the threat that you need, then it's fine.
Yeah, exactly. You've gone for the thing after.
Oh, a free Otawara. Thank you.
Very happy. See, that's why the Goblin Guide wasn't attacking. He didn't want to give the opponent, extra cards.
And it's a free kill as well.
This is a bit of a sus attack. I mean, I would block this every time if I was George, obviously, but that seems like such an obvious block. You have to imagine Jay has something to follow this up with that will hopefully for them deal with the construct and allow more aggressive attacks in the future.
I mean, George is fully expecting it. considering there's 2 damage marked on the card
Yeah.
right now.
Depends on what they're going with. Because I think, a lot. There's a J is definitely one for playing many modal spells. So a braid, while it would deal 3 damage, would also just straight up kill this artifact.
Yes. Yep.
I know they're a big fan of the new one from Dustmourn, the untimely malfunction, which is like a redirect attached to a shatter, attached to something else. I can't remember what the other thing is off the top of my head. So there's a bunch of those types of cards. So it can be quite hard to play around stuff when you're playing against Jay because they just have so many cards that do so many different things.
Yep.
Yeah, that's another. I feel like that's. Yeah, I'll just stick with what I was doing. Anyway, I'm on 11. You got that? Do you want to go? No, you're fine.
1 or 2 things can't block this turn is the other thing.
Yes. And getting, seeing that Abstergo Entertainment coming down, getting the Treasure Cruise off immediately.
Yep.
Heads up
Good
play from
timing.
Jay there.
Good timing. I like it.
Yep.
8th mana, draw 3.
Yep. And it's the slight downside of the fact that George went and did that at sorcery speed is that Jay was aware of it, so could play around it like this.
Mm-hmm.
But, if you get a chance to cast a Treasure Cruise, you usually cast a Treasure Cruise. So it might not actually have made that much difference even if George had gone it for the instant speed, and you understand why they wouldn't. This is.
Yep.
We've seen Stifle, but that's definitely not the only Stifle that is in Jay's deck. So.
I love the fact that Jay has this reputation of just stopping everything from happening that you want to happen.
Yeah, and it's been interesting that the deck's really improved. Oh, there's Manamo, the one I was talking about. Okay.
Meeny, mo. Nice.
For a long time, they were kind of just putting whatever blue-red cards they liked in it, and decided to make this, properly try to make this a good deck that does the thing most
Competitive
optimally.
deck to win.
Yeah, and it's really made a difference. It's just so much quick, efficient stuff. The heck is that? Oh, it's
It's
Phyrexian
the
Metamorph.
Metamorph.
The weird art Phyrexian Metamorph from one of those some things. And we're making a new One Ring.
Oh, that's a good idea.
Yeah. Well, you don't want to take 3 damage every turn if you're playing against a tempo deck, if you can avoid it. Give yourself another turn of protection. Start drawing some more cards. Can even, if you feel like it, buy back your original One Ring with Abstergo Entertainment.
Yeah.
Just do it in a couple of turns.
Prove to everybody once and for all that there is not only one.
Yes. Many rings. These are just, but this one's clearly not as good because the art's different. So maybe it's one of the dwarfs rings or something.
Fair enough.
I'm not. I know a reasonable amount of Tolkien lore, but I can't go into the difference between all the rings.
No, I'm not au fait with Lord of the Rings either. But I was talking to my wife the other day. In fact, a Post Malone song came on. She was playing some Post Malone songs, and I went, "Is this Post Malone?" And she went, "Oh yeah." And I went, "Oh okay." I always find it weird when I'm listening to Posty because I've listened to him talk about magic more than I've listened to him sing, listen to his music. So I know him as a magic player who's bought the One Ring, and Kate, he's like, what?
Well, this time spell is going to be good if it resolves. Untap so much more mana, like an absurd amount more mana.
Yeah, it's pretty stupid.
If they have a counter spell, it feels quite inclined to fire it off, I would imagine. But sadly, just has
This is just dumping hand.
Yeah, just making use of the hand. But and this is kind of at the stage where I would be a little bit surprised if George doesn't win this turn.
Yeah, this is the start of a win, I would have thought.
Yeah. Just because it does matter if you just to go into 7 lands, it would obviously make a huge difference. But yeah, and just getting some value off of the Ottawa as well on the interim, just to make sure, keep the threats low, I suppose. But it almost doesn't matter what George draws off of this Echo because the cards are designed to work.
Yes.
Not Echo Transfer, sorry. Got confused with Echo of Eons, which is just another different wheel that I'm sure is in George's. Yeah, I'm sure they're all in George's deck. Yeah, it almost doesn't matter what's drawn because they'll all do something, and the thing that they do will enable something else, and it's just kind of this ever ticking machine that just keeps ticking over. And Jay just hasn't had the pressure this game to really kind of put George under it and make them have to think about quick lines and getting through it.
A machine with lots of cogs is like the perfect way to describe an artifact deck, right?
Yeah. Yeah, it's an interesting because it's definitely not always. I mean, it is definitely a find the line deck. The Academy deck it's a complicated deck. To find the line to win is can be quite difficult depending on the circumstances of you and your opponent's deck and all of those types of things. But like
It's
one of
not
the
as
reasons it's so
scripted
hard is,
for sure, right? You've got to
Yeah.
find your route through.
yeah, and the problem is in that sense, there's just so many lines.
Yeah.
Like, and half of one set of lines line up with the other half of other sets of lines anyway. So you can start on one line and end up thinking you're winning in, I don't know, by decking your opponent or something or like casting every spell in your library with Golos, and then realizing that you actually don't need to do that. You can just do something else, and
Yeah.
here's
a walking ballista. I do have infinite mana. You're dead.
Yeah. Transmute Artifact, pretty good one. Jay probably hoping they found a counter spell here, but it doesn't look like it.
This is
Yeah,
going
it's
to be
not yet.
Paradox Engine, surely.
Yeah, and that's got to just be
Yeah, I
game.
can't be asked to do that turn.
Yep.
Okay.
Yeah, agrees.
No, I mean,
Yeah, Paradox Engine, the One Ring, and a Soul Ring is a lot of things to have to deal with, especially with a handful of cards. So I was perfectly reasonable. As you can probably tell by the time on this is going long with this game. So Jay wanted to make sure they have enough time to play game three.
That's to be fair. Yeah, Jay knows that if they've only got 10 minutes left to play a match, that Jay's probably favoured.
With the exception of a nut draw that Jay can't interact with.
Yeah.
Jay's far more lucky to win in 5 minutes than George is.
Super
And it is
interesting
one
match. I'm really enjoying this one. This is good.
Yeah, it's an interesting matchup. Two good decks with people who are playing them like pretty well.
Yeah.
So it's a good one to watch. And I do enjoy Jay because Tempo isn't that much of a played archetype. From what I've seen, kind of checking around on YouTube or wherever the
Globally
sources.
and in Victoria.
Yeah, exactly. So like, I'm always really happy to see like cool decks because I tried to build a Jeskai Tempo deck at one point, and I'm just not very good at it. Like,
Okay.
I'm terrible at figuring out when to tap out and when to leave stuff up. So I always end up playing either mid range or control because in one of them you always tap out and in one of them you never tap out. So
It's got to be a really difficult one to build as well.
I would just try and decide what are the best threats, what are the ones that are relevant enough, like low enough to the ground.
Yeah.
And it's definitely one I can easily imagine getting lost in pet cards if you're not
Oh
strict
yeah, for
yourself.
sure. Yep.
But yeah, if there's only I think 10 minutes on the round that they were saying, you would probably favour Jay, but there is an interesting like push pull there with whether Jay wants to try and keep a hand that is aggressive and just like gets them dead, or wants to try and mitigate against George just nut drawing into like
emptying hand, wheeling, winning the game.
Yeah, exactly.
We've Jay's just flipped over a load of cards, unfortunately, so gonna have to shuffle again and redraw.
Yep. Just a quick one though, not much going.
I am gonna get down on a Sunday and play with you guys in Nottingham at some point soon. Keen to come and like actually meet everybody properly.
Yeah, that would be good. If you can give enough notice, I can get a deck you actually want to play for you, rather than just asking if someone has a deck they can buy.
Anyone got a pre-con?
No, they don't exist. So Jay, almost doing both of the things that I was talking about, because there is a Delver, which is obviously can be quite an aggressive start with the interaction. And a blind Delver flip is also good, but with the interaction to stop defense grid, which would just completely hose Jay's deck. So the first couple of turns have gone pretty much perfectly.
That can't have been much better. Like hitting the spell off the Delver, you're now on a clock, and a pretty fast one.
And the Ancient Tomb, if George wants to keep using that, that
Exactly.
is something that, yeah. There's a lot of value for Jay.
I will need that back. I'm planning on playing it.
Ancient Tomb is pointed, but in this situation it looks pretty sad.
It's weird, right?
Yeah, Ancient Tomb is now that it's obviously a point. It has not become the free include that it once was, obviously. But there are still matches that do and don't want it, even when it was at 0 points. The power it obviously has from an academy deck is very good and
Yeah.
does really well in aggro decks that aren't too heavy on their pips as well. Just force out a 3-drop on turn 2 or whatever. But it can get you dead.
We
We
can't say for sure, but it looked like George was thinking about casting something for 2 and chose not to there.
Yes, distinct possibility.
And if that is the case, like, I mean, yeah, here you go. I can understand why you wouldn't want to take 2, considering you're taking 3 in the air every turn.
Yeah, exactly. It's a significant clock. It's fine if you're playing Commander and 4 people have 40 life, but in this type of format, it's there is a downside to it. And if Jay's just playing another 3 power flyer and just being like, okay, this is a 2-turn clock now, do your best.
We haven't seen much in the way of interaction from George's deck, right? I'm assuming there's just not that much of it.
No, there's from memory, there's an Aether Spellbomb and an Otawara.
Yeah.
And there's probably a bit more. See if I can see the deck list.
Tinker's pretty darn powerful.
Yes, definitely not interaction spell, but exceptionally powerful and can pretty much almost solve any problem in George's deck.
We've got
So here,
Orrery. Okay.
Exactly. We don't have mana, so let's go and get this random 7 mana artifact that is probably, I mean, again, I'm far from an expert in Academy decks, but it's probably not even an auto include in Academy decks at this stage, because why would you something that makes that much mana when you've got so many other things that are less expensive that still make all the mana in the world? But looking great here because fixing all mana problems, and George just completely off to the races.
Okay, it all makes sense. Like, it's a bit of a strange one in that Jay's George is under so much pressure from Jay here, and just going to get some more mana. I suppose you need the mana because you've only got an Ancient Tomb in play, but it makes a lot more sense when you've got a key in hand.
Yeah, this is suddenly you're like, maybe not this turn, but next turn you're just going to combo off and win because you just got so much mana. If you can somehow
Jay's scared at this point.
Yeah, just if there's even an Academy or a Candelabra or like any of those just other little bits of cheating stuff, or just a 1 ring to buy an extra turn, George is suddenly, because obviously when you get to 10 minutes, you still got your 5 turns at the end. If your last turn takes 10 minutes, but it wins you the game, you still win the game, right?
Yeah, that's true. That's true.
There's obviously a few lines here that George is trying to figure out what the best approach is.
Wargate. What's Wargate do? Search your library for a permanent card to convert mana cost X or less, put it into play, then shuffle. Okay.
That's another good include in decks that's obviously good in many ways, but it's almost an auto include in decks that really care about having 1 or 2 specific lands, like Academy. But you can also, in this instance, would get Paradox Engine if you'd made all of the millions of mana, which.
I was going to say, Wargate for an Academy doesn't, but it's
Oh,
for
and then Golos is
it's Wargate for Golos, because I was thinking, why have we paid for 8 mana for this thing then? But that makes sense.
Yeah. Why get just like the most busted land ever printed when you can attach it to a 3/5 that's been banned in multiple formats? Multiple might be exaggeration. It might only be banned in Commander. It might be.
I mean, with this chromatic orrery as well, Golos spinning is an option.
Yeah, and Saga as well is really powerful, and having a removal spell here is
clutch.
Amazing. Yeah. Lose a little bit of mana. Of note, can't take the Volatile Stormbreaker because it's hexproof from abilities. Not that it really matters. They're both basically the same on the battlefield. But that Saga represents another tutor as well, and the clock is diminished. There's only if we ignore Ancient Tomb, a 4-turn clock with no extra pressure.
Yeah,
from Jay,
if George has got that amount of time, I think he's probably feeling pretty good.
Yeah, I would agree. Losing the key to the reliquary is not nothing, but again, you've got so much mana already. You've got the ROE, you've got Academy. You're laughing, really.
Yeah, it was also a necessary evil.
Yes, 100%. So yeah, there is a bit more interaction, as you can see. Like again, and it's good to find ones that Collector Reef is just a big problem for Academy, for any artifact based deck. So having ones that can deal with it on their own. I assume
Right.
Portable Hole is probably in this list as well. Yeah, because it gets the same,
It's
the
basically the
exact
same thing, right?
Yeah. So again, and that's just kind of a reaction to how the meta and the decks work, right? If you're going to consistently show up with Academy every week, then you have to expect your opponents to show up with Collector
Yes,
Reefs to
for
a certain
sure.
extent. You then have to know what beats you and try and do your best to do it. I've had games against academies where I slammed Collector Reef and it's just won me the game, even though I didn't do anything for 6 turns.
Oh,
But
we have a
now,
Soul Ring
yep,
with the Ori. Well, okay, that's just more mana. You've got quite a lot, George.
yep. But it has so many things to deal with it. To do with it. So he hasn't played a land. So even if he was to hit a land off of the Golos, gets the extra value there. So he can activate Golos, can make an Urza Saga token, can do whatever other busted thing he has in his hand. Does make the Saga token, which is reasonable.
1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Soft and 9 mana.
So I don't even want to guess. I'm assuming it's double digit mana, just floating, let alone.
We're on. Oh yeah, it's a lot of mana. Oh, there's some more mana. That's a sad.
Okay, so
That's a sad flip.
yeah, that Jay must be feeling pretty good about that because Golos could just spin some ridiculous hit. I remember playing this in a vintage cube deck and hitting Emrakul Leon's Torn off of it. So like it can just, because you do cast the spells, it can just crush you. But they're just a
Oh
free
no,
lander for
George,
you.
don't pay for the signet. It's free. There you
Yeah.
go.
There you go, he's got it. Yes. That's just Golos' gift to you, is you get your own little signet. He's so sweet. But that was actually huge. That whiff on the Golos
Yeah, it's pretty
is
painful.
potentially given Jay just an extra turn to try and get something done here. Because there is, there's not enough. There's a lot of stuff. Don't get me wrong, but
All right, this is time on the round just been
there's
called.
times they're on turn 0. So this becomes that real tension point I was talking about earlier for Jay, where it's, do I try and get you dead and play to the board as much as possible to get you dead, or am I worried about you just comboing off next turn and beating me? Because both of those things could easily happen from this point out.
Yep. Yeah, like 5 turns is actually quite a lot at this point in the game, weirdly.
Yeah.
But it's so strange that it's like still on a knife edge, and look at the board state. Like the fact that Jay's close to a win here is crazy. It's just George is at a low life total.
Yep. Yeah, Ancient Tomb has mattered. There's like at least 4, maybe 6. There's been no Inventor's Fair or anything, just to chew a little bit of life gain back. And that turn 1 Blind Delver flip was obviously huge for Jay, and it's just allowed a lot of pressure. Down to 4. I mean, there's spells in Jay's deck that can just kill from 4. Back to basics is a huge one as well.
It doesn't. It doesn't.
Doesn't
It
stop the
doesn't
ROE
help.
or the
It
spell
doesn't
one.
help win. It slows George down.
Yeah. So there's no extra construct token coming. We're cutting down Academy mana, but Ori and Soaring are still there. Saga will still tutor. There's a reasonable chance that the Saga goes and gets a Candelabra that untaps the Academy anyway. But then if it's getting that, it's not getting anything else that's making you dead faster, if that makes sense.
Yep.
So like it's not the massive I win the game swing it could be, so even in this matchup in different circumstances, but it does make a big impact, and it's just trying to, Jay has enough turns to kill George if George does not gain any life and does not win himself. So just trying to make sure he gets as much chance to do that, or he gets as little chance to answer as possible. But yeah, there is the Candelabra. So
Candelabra. So now we have we have a way to untap the land that does not untap.
Yes, exactly. You can, obviously Candelabra is famous for the loops with voltaic keys and paradox engines, and all of those ways of tapping and untapping, and all of the busted things that cheap artifacts that were printed 20 odd years ago, and also paradox engine can do.
It's interesting, isn't it, that that's an archetype where all the a lot of the broken cards are from a long time ago.
That happened.
Yeah.
That maybe they've just wisened up to how powerful this type of an effect is, so they just don't do it. You have to go back quite a long way to get your powerful cards for these decks.
Yeah, there's a
compared to
massive, there's a big dichotomy between the super early, absurdly powerful cards like your Candelabras and your Sol Rings and your Black Lotuses and your Ancestral Recalls.
yes,
And then there's a big dip that gradually curves up to 2024, and we have Fourth Earlingus and Minsk and Boo
yeah,
and all of those stuff.
cards
And
that rival them, but differently. It's not quite so straightforward as, hey, just draw 3 cards or take an extra turn for two mana.
this Walking Ballista that's been tutored for off the Sly West does just represent the win. I assume they have enough mana between them to make this something lethal to kill Jay. Again, it's quite hard to do the maths from here.
Yeah, it is.
Because of note, the ballista cannot kill the Drake.
Oh yes, I'd missed that. I was thinking it could, but yeah, you're right. It can't.
So how much mana have you got left? It would be. You're playing
So this might not even be enough. I'm not sure if Jay can now get them dead this turn.
pitching a treasure.
But
Oh, we're gonna subtlety the ballista.
Yes. So that's pretty strong, because it means the ballista's not coming down at all.
Oh, and it resolves. Okay. Well,
So now with George's board, there's nothing to be done. Jay has, there's no lethal on George's board. Not enough mana to do anything else really. Doesn't have lethal. Obviously, I assume that ballista plus the Golos and the construct attack would have been lethal. So yeah, it does look like George has probably just got it here. Probably just lost it here on the back of that subtlety.
subtlety's pretty strong.
Oh shit, really?
3 spells. Oh, that.
Pact in hand, but it doesn't stop the subtlety. Yeah.
Wait, what?
Very nice.
Pact. Pact is in hand.
Yeah.
It
so
does.
that
It does stop subtlety, right?
Pact can counter subtlety. Yeah, it can counter the spell. Obviously, the trigger is a thing that puts the ballista back on top, but the Pact can counter the casting of the spell that is required for the trigger to happen. So that might have just been a mistake there. George maybe not too used to counter spells and thought it was maybe a force of negation or something like that.
Because it could be that because the evoke is a cast of subtlety. It's just an alternate casting cost.
Yes, you're still casting it.
It's not an ability where you just cheat it into play by exiling a card. And I wonder whether that's the mistake, is that George thinks that it can't be countered.
Yeah, quite possibly. Yeah.
Well, either way, great game. Interesting end to it as well, and Jay came away with the win. Thank you so much again for joining us, James. It's been a pleasure.
No worries. Always a pleasure to be here. Thank you very much.
All right, I'll catch you next time.
Cheers.
Bye.